welcome to Stillspeakpod, day 17, and still no Brian laundry. Ugh, man, this is just too rough, man. I don't know about you, but I'm just feeling like as every hour that goes by and I'm refreshing, I'm just like hoping for that moment to have that breaking news, and then there's nothing. I can only imagine how our parents feel, but so there's really not a whole lot to discuss today, to be honest with you. There was a lot of talk amongst the groups and YouTube and what have you about this new body cam footage. I think everybody has come to the general conclusion that that was a much more heartbreaking footage than the first one. A lot of people said that. And I just finished recording part 2 of my revisiting the body cam footage, where I finished going over the original body cam footage, and I'm going to record tomorrow the part 3, which will be about this new footage. There was a lot of talk about that today. And then midday, something happened involving Cassie Laundry, which is Brian's sister. And this became like the talking point for the day. And because I'm not the one to usually join the majority right off the bat, I have to sit and process and think things through before I decide which camp I'm in. Everybody immediately was like, oh my God, she lied. She's this, she's that, she's this. Okay, hold on. Before I even go any further than this, please keep in mind that Cassie is married. Her husband probably has a job. She might have a job. They also have small children. Okay? Let's be careful to... speculating is one thing, okay? Considering is another thing. But going to the point of like, now you're like digging up dirt on her, looking up her employer, contacting the employer, or anything of the sort that involves real life, or you're putting her children in danger, please don't do that. For the love of God, please. Because you don't know for sure if she's involved in covering up for Brian, and that's not fair. Like, if she's not, she didn't ask for all this, okay? And I'm seeing some really just unsettling things from people. Doxing and going real life is never okay. Ever. It's just not. I'm sorry. I can never get on board with that. Because people still have to live their lives, and they should be able to do so without having to live in fear that some crazy lunatic on the internet's going to show up to their house or harm their children because they're angry. Or worried that they're going to lose their job because, again, some crazy on the internet called the job and was like, oh my God, you have somebody working there and she's helping her brother. He's a murderer. Like, people do these types of things. I know it sounds insane, but I've seen it. They do it. So, okay to talk about her, okay to speculate about her. Just be mindful of your words and your actions, because you don't want to do something that is going to cause more havoc or more harm or worsen or destroy somebody else's life. When I said in my video about the body cam footage, there's enough lives that have been affected by this that we don't need to make it worse or make more people whose lives have been destroyed because of it. So let's talk about Cassie and why everybody was like, oh my God, she lied. So Cassie did an interview with Good Morning America. I think it was the 15th or the 16th. I think I'm going to lean more on it was the 16th. It might have been the 17th, okay? I don't know the exact date for positively sure. But she did that one interview, and she said in this video that she loved Gabby like a sister, and her and her kids loved her, and that she, is hoping nothing more than for her to come home safely, and for this to be all a misunderstanding. And I came to you guys and I said that people, I think, were misunderstanding her. I don't think she was saying this is a misunderstanding. I think she was saying that she was hoping that she would come home safe, and that this situation she hoped was just a big misunderstanding. And in this interview, you actually don't see, at least I haven't seen, so if you have something different than what I'm seeing is, in this clip of her interview, you actually don't hear the reporter specifically ask her questions. You only see what she's answering. And I haven't seen a video of what they were actually asking her. I've seen transcripts of what they claim to have asked her. I haven't seen actual audio, video. I went searching for it today. So again, if you have that, please send it to me. I would like to see it. Because what I'm going to say next, I know is not going to be a popular opinion, but I'm going to say it anyway. What she said is that she hadn't been able to speak to him, and that she would like to speak to him, okay? The transcripts claim that they had asked her if she had spoken to Brian since he got back. We only hear her answering, and what she answered was what I just said, that she hadn't spoken to him and she would like to speak to him or get the chance to speak to him, okay? So because of this transcript, people were under the impression that, according to this, station, that had interviewed her, that she was saying that she hadn't spoken to her brother since the first. So you would imagine today when another reporter comes out with they had contacted the laundryist lawyer about Cassie and if Cassie had seen Brian or if Cassie went to the campground with them, and he replied, hold on, let me read it exactly. So the jaw-dropping moment was, he said, to my knowledge, Cassie went for a day, meaning to the campground, okay? So this immediately sparked, oh my God, she said in her interview she hadn't spoken to him since the first, so now this lawyer is saying that she went to the campground on the 6th or the 7th and visited with him for a day, so how did she not see him or speak to him like she said, okay? And then there was a follow-up, and he said that Cassie saw her brother Brian on the 1st when he stopped by her home, and she saw him again on September 6th at Fort DeSoto Park, and that law enforcement agencies were well aware of these dates that she had seen him, and that, any report saying that any prior communication by Cassie does not reflect these dates as simply a difference of relating an answer to a question that was misinterpreted by Cassie or poorly posed by the inquirer. So what he's saying is basically that she misunderstood if she, there was miscommunication, and that maybe she misunderstood the question, because now it's changing to she was in his presence, so how did you not speak to him if you were in his presence twice since he's been back? And a lot of people were like, oh, give me a break. How would you misunderstand that? To those people, I will say this. If you've never given an interview before, then you have no idea how nerve-wracking it is, okay? It's really nerve-wracking, even for the most strong of people. And yes, it's very easy to misunderstand a question. Absolutely. I cannot even tell you how many questions I was asked in an interview once where I went off and answered an entirely different thing, and then I was like, wait a minute, what was your question? So no, I'm going to have to disagree with you. It's absolutely easy to misunderstand a question, okay? And under this stressful situation that she is under, because this involves her parents and her brother, it makes it even more so that she could have misunderstood it, and she was trying to be careful because she doesn't want to say anything, of course, that's going to make anybody look at her badly. So, all that being said, when I listened to Cassie saying what she said, I had to consider that what she was trying to say was that she hadn't spoken to him since all of this began. Not necessarily that she hadn't spoken to him since he got back. Meaning, when this all began on the 11th, that she hadn't had the moment to speak to him. And that makes even more sense to me when I think about the fact that allegedly Brian had taken off on the 14th. So if she's given this interview on the 16th or the 17th, she actually might already known that he had taken off. So how would she speak to him? He wasn't even around. Do you follow what I'm saying here? So if she meant, I haven't spoken to him, I wish I could speak to him, or the exact words that she used, maybe she didn't mean since he's been back, maybe she meant since this began on the 11th, but by the 14th he was already gone, and she's given this interview days later after that, and she may have already known that he'd taken off, we just didn't know. And so she's like, I wish I could talk to him. Like, in her mind she's thinking, like, he's not even around, we don't even know where he is. So just, I know, trust me, I say it all the time, I know, it'd be so easy for me to come on here and be like, yeah guys, you're totally right, she was totally lying, what a bee, like, wow, she's so deceitful, she must be hiding him out, hiding him in her attic, there's no basements in Florida. I could do that. I can easily do that and just join the bandwagon. But I like to dissect. I like to look at things a little less reactively. Okay, people are very quick to react. They hear something, they react. They don't give their brains time to process information. So when I took the time today to process it and to listen to her interview again and spent the time looking to see if there was audio of them actually asking the words, have you spoken to him since he's been back? Then I came to the conclusion that she could have just meant that she hadn't spoken to him since it all began on the 11th. And it makes even more sense given that he was gone by the 14th, that she couldn't speak to him, and she'd like to speak to him, but nobody knows where the hell he is. So there's that. That's what I gotta say about that. And I have respect for some reporters that are following this case. One of them in particular, definitely, but he did go to the house, her house, 45 minutes away after this news broke to see if she would try to give a new statement, and was knocking on her door, and dogs were going crazy and whatever. Now, I don't consider that real life. He's a reporter. He's doing his job, right? He's knocking on the door. But at the same time, she also has neighbors and children and a husband, and I think if she was going to talk again, she would have done so already, right? But he's doing his job, so I can't hate on him for that, and he's been absolutely amazing at keeping everybody up to date on all of this case, and is very on top of confirming or denying information for us, or saying that that's not true, etc. And then I wanted to talk about two other things. One was this person commented on one of my older videos of Gabby, and the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I want to make a suggestion. And that suggestion is, when you come across a new channel, and I'm not talking about my channel, I'm talking about anybody's channel, and you're listening to a video, right? And let's say you hear something that you don't agree with. Okay, that happens, right? You don't have to agree with everybody. My suggestion to you is to not automatically go to attack that person for thinking differently than you, but instead to reserve that, and then go and listen to other videos they've done before attacking them. To hear them out and give them a chance to see if what they say in other videos is something more along the lines of how you view the story. Because this person watched an older video of Gabby's of mine, and then she made all these very untrue statements to the effect of, like, you think that you're entitled to all the information, all the evidence, you think you're privy, you're not privy, blah, 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 blah. And I never once hinted or said that I'm privy. I never once said that we deserve to get information and evidence. I have followed many cases that I know we don't get a lot of information. The little information that we do get is usually from other sources, not from the FBI. So there's number one. She's completely wrong. She made an assumption because I said I wanted more information, as taking that as me saying that I'm privy or I deserve or give me a break. That's not what I was saying. I think we all know that we're not privy to it and we don't deserve it, but we can all agree that we all want it, right? I want it. I want to see what the hell the FBI has. I'm sure you do too. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean that I deserve it. So that was where she went wrong, number one. And then she went on to say that I'm so quick to say he's guilty, and that helps nothing, and again, completely unfounded statement, because if she listened to all of my videos on Gabby's case, she would have heard me in the beginning actually throwing Brian many bones and trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. She would have heard me going over every possible theory there was. She would have heard me speculating. She would have heard all of that and seen that I actually didn't jump to immediately accuse him or assume that he was guilty. I'm one of the few that didn't, okay? So you hear one video, which may have been my 6th or 7th video, where I now had come to the conclusion that he was guilty, and you missed the 6 or 7 videos I did prior where I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I actually didn't come to the conclusion of him being guilty until later. So context is always very important here. In these videos, when I'm doing an update, I'm not going to repeat everything I said in a prior video and then add on to it. I mean, I'm not going to do that. So when I pick up here and I start talking to you, I'm picking up like you heard the other videos already. And I'm just going to talk to you like you've been following along with me all along. So that was where she went wrong as well. But again, people like to react. They hear something and they react. There's no pause. There's no, you know what, let me hear what the prior video said. No. It's immediately, I don't agree with you. And then she's like, you're talking about she shows signs of abuse, but you never shared why you think that. Well, actually, I did, commenter. I did. In another video. You just didn't tune into that video. You just automatically jumped to assume that, I just was accusing Brian of abusing her without giving reasons why I think that, when I actually did, if you listen to my other videos. So, I don't need to go any further than this. This person actually doesn't need this attention, because I actually don't want to have followers or people who come to the channel who are reactive. I don't actually want people who are quick to assume something about somebody without investigating it further and leaving nasty comments. So she's not worth the time. I only am addressing it because I want to point out to people that, especially on I think I have like 60 something videos, and I've only had this channel for like a month. Okay, I'm doing at least one a day, if not multiple a day. So there's been a lot of things I've said. I spent a lot of time putting these things together, that going off of one 45-minute video, and you're missing so much about that person. So if you go to somebody's channel, if you don't agree with them, that's fine, but I just implore you to give them a chance. Listen to their other videos. You might actually be like, oh, okay, all right, well, that makes sense why she said that in the other video, right? And it saves arguments, and it's just being fair. Just be fair, right? You can't assume something about somebody off one video that's maybe 30, 45 minutes. Anyway, moving on from that. Also, last night in my video, I was talking about Brian calling his parents on the way home from Wyoming, probably on the 31st, to kind of give them a heads up, like, hey, Mom and Dad, just to let you know, I'm on my way back. Gabby's not with me. Here's why. And then he told them whatever he told them. I don't think that he just showed up to the house like, hey, I'm back. Oh, no, I don't have Gabby with me. I don't think that's how it went down. I think it's plausible that he drove back. And we talked about this because it was said that Roberta had canceled the camping trip from the 1st to the 3rd, and she did so on the 31st of August. And people automatically assumed that this meant that she knew he was coming home without Gabby, and so she canceled it. So this was like mysterious and suspicious. And I was saying, well, not really, because if he gave them a heads up, like, hey, I'm coming back into town, you know, just letting you know, she might have been like, either A, okay, we want to see you, we haven't seen you in 2 months. This is what I said in the video. We haven't seen you in 2 months, so we want to see you, and we had a camping trip, so what we're going to do is we're going to cancel it. Or, I'm going to reschedule it, son, because we want you to come camping with us. So I'm going to cancel our camping trip for tomorrow, and I'm going to schedule it for next week so you can be with us. And my mom actually called me, because she listens to these, and she said, you said, you know, that they hadn't seen him for 2 months, but he went home in the middle of August. And she was right, but at the same time, maybe I didn't clarify enough in the video, so I want to clarify now. We actually don't know how factual it is that he went home from the 17th to the 23rd. Her mother has said this, and I assume that the mother would know, and I don't know why she would say that if she didn't know. That being said, we don't know what he went home for. We also don't know if he flew or if he drove, and we don't know factually in the sense that law enforcement has not confirmed or denied this information. So at this point, without all of the information, it's not actually fully factual that he went home in the middle of August. He probably did, right? So to clarify my point, though, is what I was trying to say was it was either, hey, we haven't seen you in 2 months if he didn't go home in August, so we're going to cancel our camping trip so we can see you, or it was he had just been home 2 weeks prior or a week prior, and they had this camping trip, and he's like, hey, I'm coming home for good this time, and they were like, you know what, we're going to cancel the trip, and we're going to schedule it for next week since you're coming home, and you can come with us. And that's if he did go. So I just wanted to clarify that because she got confused until I explained it further. So I was like, you know what, I better just clarify it, because if she got confused, more than likely somebody else got confused, or somebody else is going to come at me and say, well, had just been home a week prior. Oh, that was my phone. So, and that's an excellent point. Yes, absolutely. I'm just going off the two situations on if he did or if he didn't. Either way, it's not odd that he would be in communication with his family to let them know he was coming home, and that they would reschedule this camping trip either way. That's that. Okay. Today, which is, it's almost 11 p.m., but another hour, but today was October 1st, so it's actually been 1 month since Brian Laundrie returned to his parents' Florida home. It's been 20 days since her mother reported her missing. It'll be 21 tomorrow since it is close to midnight. And today was day 17 since Brian allegedly left his parents' home, becoming a star in a real-life version of Where's Waldo. I think one thing we know for sure at this point, there are a ton of males his age who look like him, and that's really interesting, right? Like, there's a lot of people who look like Brian, unless Brian is in 9 different states at one time. There's also that, because apparently he's everywhere. And I did an update timeline on the 23rd, I think, or the 24th. I had updated it, right? I had done the timeline twice. I did the timeline in my first video ever, which has like almost 3,000 views. I did the timeline again when she was still missing, because I wanted people to really look at their footage and what have you. So we went over every single place she could possibly have been. And then I did it the third time, and I had updated it. And when I did that, I started from August 12th, because at that point, she already had been found, and I was like, you know what, there's no reason to even discuss July anymore, right? Because that's not even important. What happened after the 12th is more important. So I started from the 12th. And then I added in the, you know, supposed witnesses, like the hitchhiking story and stuff like that, and then I kind of filled in some dates. Well, now we know even more information since then, so we're going to go over it, and we're going to do it quickly just so we can keep track of all of this. So we know that August 12th was their incident. Okay. August 13th, they would have been back together. And then on August 17th is when it's alleged that he went back to Florida until the 23rd. And I'm going to stop there for 1 second. And I said this in one of my other videos about the body cam footage, and I'm probably going to say it again in my part 3 of my body cam footage, but why not just say it again here too? It should be noted here, during that incident, when they're talking about giving them a break from each other and taking a breather, neither Gabby nor Brian said to the officer, oh, we're actually going to get a really long break because Brian's going to Florida, or I'm going to Florida, if it was Brian speaking, in a couple of days for a week. Neither one of them brought this up. And given that incident, you would think this would have been said. Like, oh, we're going to get a good, nice break from each other, so that's going to be helpful. They didn't. So this kind of tells me it wasn't planned at the time of the incident. That's what it tells me. Because I just think that it really would have been brought up in some way from either one of them, and it never was. Again, I just explained, we don't know if he flew, we don't know if he drove, we don't know what he went home for, what sparked him going home. We're going off Gabby's mom saying that it was the 17th to the 23rd. We don't actually know fully if this is completely factual or if he went, okay, whatever. Moving on. So, he's gone from the 13th to the 23rd. 17th to the 23rd, and then she's in a hotel, okay? And her father speaks with her for the last time on August 21st, and he actually was helping her fix her website for her blog, and he had ordered her a pizza. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, said that she FaceTimed with Gabby on the 23rd or the 24th. I have yet to see if she picked what actual day it was, but I remember her originally saying it was the 23rd or the 24th. On the 24th is Gabby and Brian are seen checking out of the Salt Lake City hotel. And they went from there, they stopped in Ogden. That's when she took her picture in front of the butterfly mural, and it ended up being her last social media post. And on August 25th, that was the last time that Nicole spoke to Gabby, but it was on the phone only, and she actually had told her mother that she was in Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. I actually don't know for sure if Gabby said that she was in Grand Teton, near Grand Teton, or almost to Grand Teton. I don't think it really matters, but that was never actually clarified. And this was actually the day that she took the picture in Ogden on the way from Salt Lake City to Grand Teton National Park. And then we talked that on August 26th, there's multiple witnesses who claim to have seen the couple. I actually know one more that we can add to this timeline. One was a man who said they saw Brian at a bar alone, and he was fighting with another man, and that he was really agitated. And this guy claims the bar was near Yellowstone. Yellowstone's not far from Grand Teton, so it's plausible. But another witness claims on the 26th that she saw Brian alone as well, but it was in Grand Teton, and he was acting all strange. She made a very vague statement about him being strange. And these are also unconfirmed. There was another person, a male, who claimed to see Brian alone on the 26th. But then you have an Idaho shop owner who said he saw the couple on the 26th, and they were together, and they were happy. So that conflicts with these other people who are claiming to see Brian on the 26th and also Grand Teton and Yellowstone, and that he was alone because apparently he was in Idaho with her, so you can't be in all these places. You can't be in Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Idaho all at the same time on the same day. So we don't know what's happening on the 26th here and if any of these people were telling the truth. Or they thought they saw him and it really wasn't him. On the 27th, we learned that Gabby's mom received a text from her where she had referred to her grandfather as Stan, and this stood out to her because she didn't normally call him by his first name. And, in hindsight, looking at this, we can say maybe this wasn't Gabby, and of course it was alarming to her, but not alarming enough. And then also on the 27th, there was allegedly an altercation between Gabby and Brian, and then Brian and a hostess at a restaurant called the Mary Piglet Restaurant around 1 p.m. And we do know that at some point it was confirmed by the restaurant that Gabby and Brian did visit this restaurant. What is not confirmed is what day, what time, or if there really was an altercation, but a witness claims that she did see an altercation. I tend to believe this witness much more than I believe the other ones, but it's not completely factual at this point, other than at some point Brian and Gabby did visit this restaurant. Also on the 27th, a few hours after this alleged altercation, is when the vloggers caught the van on camera on the side of a dirt road in Grand Teton National Park in the Spread Creek dispersing area, which ultimately, in the end, we know that her body was located not far from that van where it was seen in the footage, and it ultimately helped locate her. And there was a couple of ladies who, I'm not even going to get into them because I did a whole video about them. If you want to listen to that, where I go over the hitchhikers, or the people who claim they picked him up hitchhiking. I did a whole video about that, and we went over it. And those ladies claim that he was hitchhiking on the 29th of August. On the 30th, her mother received a text that said no service in Yosemite. And we also don't know if this was Brian or if this was an autocorrect issue. What we do know, though, is that Brian, in order to get back to Florida in the 35 to 36 hours and arrive back in Florida at 10:26 a.m., like the van had been pictured in a traffic camera, he would have needed to have left by the evening of the 30th from Wyoming, and that means he had to drive straight through with no stops. So it's a bit of a stretch to say that it was Gabby who sent the text about no service in Yosemite, because at this point he was getting ready to get on the road, and we all know she wasn't alive. So there's that. And we now know on the 30th, 31st, and the 1st, he, at some point in those days, or throughout all three of those days, had taken money from a bank card, and he did use a PIN, and the amount was over $1,000. He has an arrest warrant for this. We all are assuming that it's Gabby's because of the PIN. So that was the 30th, 31st, and the 1st. We know that he arrived back on the 1st at 10:26 a.m. Confirmed. This is from the officers. We also know now, based upon today's information, that Brian stopped at his sister's home on the 1st, which is really interesting because he got back 10:26 in the morning. I know she lives 45 minutes from their home, and after you make such a long trip like that, you're usually running on adrenaline. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he got home and then crashed. He could have went home and then went to her house at one point, or he stopped on the way, which would have been really early. So we don't know that for sure, but we know that now she did see him on the 1st. And we also got from the neighbors that he allegedly, after he had returned, that he was mowing the lawn and riding bikes with his mom. And we also learned from those same neighbors that they had went on this 3-day camping trip, which we later learned out from Dog the Bounty Hunter was to Fort DeSoto Campground. We don't know which days it was that he was mowing the lawn and riding bikes with his mother, but we do know when the camping trip was. And then on the 4th, we now know and just found out that a phone was purchased by Brian, and it was for AT&T, and then he did get a plan, and according to Steve and Bertolino, it was not a burner phone, and that when Brian ended up taking off, he left that phone at home, and the FBI now has it. So that fills in that day. Then we know that they went camping on the 6th through the 8th. Now, the reservation was for the 6th through the 8th, meaning 6, and then 6 at night, and then 7, and then 7 nighttime, and then likely left on the 8th. Steve Bertolino said 6th through the 7th. I don't think he meant that they only stayed one night. I think he was saying they were there the 6th and the 7th, meaning they left on the 8th. But that was just my interpretation of it. Other people are interpreting it a different way. Who knows, right? We know that they went camping these days. And then we do know that on the 10th, Gabby's family, after attempting to contact her for so long, and also Brian, had now turned to contacting Brian's parents. With the new knowledge of this phone, you have to wonder, when he got this new phone, did he keep the same number and was just ignoring their texts and calls? Or was he trying to avoid them, so intentionally changed his number so they couldn't contact him? $1 million question. Regardless, they ended up texting his parents, who also were not responding. And Joe Petito actually said on Dr. Phil that he did tell them at one point, when they weren't really answering and he was getting frustrated, that they were calling the police. And that still did not get them to call. Sketchy, for sure. But without knowing what Brian told them, can't really jump down their throats on that particular piece just yet. And on the 10th as well, we know her family had tried to file missing persons reports, but they were hitting some brick walls, because there's certain protocols and ways to handle these types of things. And Gabby's mother lives in Long Island, and she was going to the Suffolk County Police Department, and Gabby, obviously was living in Florida in Northport Police Department, and the dad lives on the other side of Florida, and so there was a little bit of hiccups. And ultimately, I guess it was decided that they weren't filing the missing persons report because she's an adult and she was on this cross-country trip and she's probably fine, blah, blah, blah. And the next day, her mother was actually able to get somebody to take her seriously and allow her to file the report on the 11th. At that point, because it was filed in Long Island obviously calls down to Florida, to Northport PD, and says, hey, could you go past the house and see what's going on? And that's when they make the first contact at the laundry home on the 11th. This is the point where they see the van is in the driveway, and they originally claimed to have seen Brian in the home. They just hadn't been able to speak with him. We talked about this last night in my video. You can go listen to that. And they handed the officer a phone number to a lawyer, which, if you think about it, is really sketchy. Like, she hadn't even been missing or anything. You already have a lawyer. At the same time, if you add in the fact that Joe Petito is claiming that he actually warned them that he was calling the police, that could have been the point that they got a lawyer and said, okay, well, this is getting ugly. We need to get a lawyer. Who knows? That could be a possibility. And then on the 12th, witnesses in the neighborhood noticed that the van was towed away, because we later find out that it was Gabby. So that was on the 12th. And at this point is when the story really started to circulate, right? Is picking up a lot of traction. And most of us were hearing about it by the 13th. But already at that point, there was reporters and what have you outside the home who were able to get photographs of the laundries coming and going from the house. They also had pictures of officers trying to get in contact with them, leave envelopes outside, and the father even doing some yard work. So the van being towed and police trying to attempting to have conversations with the laundries was happening on the 12th and 13th time frame. And then on the 14th is when Stephen Bertolino, their lawyer, put out his first statement acknowledging the search for Gabby was taking place, and that, the Laundrie family would be staying in the background at this time. And on the same day, the Petito and Schmidt lawyer, who is Richard Stafford, released a response to the statement, and he directed it to Brian Laundrie and said that, he basically left Gabby out in the wilderness, and they ended with calling Brian selfish and reprehensible. Now, the 14th, hear what I just said, on the 14th is when this first statement from Stephen Bertolino came out. It's this day that Brian allegedly left the home. And I actually forgot to add something in here. The day prior, on the 13th, the lawyer is claiming he spoke to Brian on speakerphone with his parents present. That's his claim. So on the 13th, he claims he spoke to Brian, so he knows Brian was at the home. On the 14th, he puts out his first statement saying that they're going to stay in the background, and they acknowledge her missing. And the 14th also when her parents replied, directing it to Brian, and this is also the day he took off, according to the parents. On the 15th, the next day, Bertolino put out another statement in that he had advised his client not to speak at this time due to his experience that intimate partners are always the first suspect or who police focus on. And at this point now, Brian had been gone for a day. We don't know when the lawyer actually found out that Brian took off. We know that we, the public, and the police didn't know until Friday evening, and that was sparked by the lawyer calling Northport to say that the Laundries wanted to speak with them. But when they arrived, it wasn't that they wanted to speak to them about Gabby. They wanted to tell them that Brian was missing. So clearly the lawyer knew before any of us knew, or even the police. We just don't know when he actually knew that Brian took off. So, but the next day after he went allegedly missing, he put out this statement about, he had advised him not to speak. And on the same day, a reporter has footage that the Mustang had returned. It was not there on the 14th, but it returned on the 15th, which kind of backs up the parents' claim that he left on the 14th with the Mustang and that they brought the Mustang home. However, Steve Bertolino says that they brought the Mustang back on the 16th, but that can't be accurate because the Mustang was back in the driveway on the 15th. And then on the 16th is when Northport Police held a press conference with the chief, and her father was there, and so was her stepmother. And Chief Garrison was asked if he knew where Brian Laundrie was, and he said yes, and he didn't want to elaborate on, where he was. And on the 16th as well, Gabby's family's lawyer, Richard Stafford, came out to a microphone in front of his office, and he read a letter that was directed to Brian's parents, where they were begging them to help them find Gabby. It was absolutely heartbreaking. On the 17th is when they were called to the Laundrie home, and they were told that Brian had been missing since Tuesday. And just prior to that, on that day, there was a press conference set up from Wyoming at 6 p.m. Minutes before that press conference, it got canceled. And next thing we knew, they were at the Laundrie home, and that we heard they were inside the Laundrie home. And after they left the Laundrie home is when the breaking news happened, and we all found out that Brian was not in that home. And the next day, on the 18th, is when the search began for Brian Laundrie in the Carlton Reserve. And there was another crew on the other side of the country in Wyoming at Grand Teton National Park that was beginning to set up to start to search for Gabby. And this was the day that the sister, Cassie, had given her interview. I think actually I said earlier that it was the 17th. No, her interview was the 18th, excuse me. So at this point, Brian had been missing for 4 days. So there's that. And so did one of Gabby's, excuse me, I lost my train of thought, friends, Rose, had also given an interview. That was on the 18th. And on the 19th in Norport, they continued to search for Brian Laundrie in the Carlton Reserve. And this is the day that they were also fully searching for Gabby. And it only took a few hours before she was located and found deceased. And shortly after that, they did a press conference saying that they had found remains that were consistent with the appearance of Gabby Petito. And that she was found, we know that she was found not far from where the van was seen in that vlogger's footage. On the 20th, they, had suspended all searches for Brian, and this is when they executed the search warrant at the Laundrie home and were there for most of the day. On the 21st, it was also more searching at the Carlton Reserve, but on the Venice side of the reserve, for Brian, and this was also the day that Gabby's body had undergone an autopsy, and we found out the manner of death was homicide and no cause of death was released. On Wednesday the 23rd, again, more searching for Brian Laundrie at the Carlton Reserve. On the 24th is when the parents left the home and they went to allegedly Orlando. Actually, we do know they went to Orlando. We just don't know what they went to Orlando for because their lawyer gave several different answers to several different lawyers on why they went to Orlando. They went to Orlando Library, the main library in downtown Orlando, which if you look it up is a huge library. Originally, he had said that they went there for business. Then he said they went to meet with a lawyer, and he told a different reporter that they actually went there to meet with him. Who knows what they actually went for? So that was on the 24th, so about a week ago. On the 25th, they were looking for Brian Laundrie, still in the Carlton Reserve, and also through the weekend they were looking there. And then on Saturday is when Dog the Bounty Hunters joined the search, and at some point he went past the Laundrie home and he was banging on the door to see if they would answer the door, and they didn't. And then the rest I've recently updated you on, which involved them going past the house to pick up DNA of Brian's, so we talked about that. And they also went back to the house allegedly to get his scent for the search dogs. We know that Dog the Bounty Hunter had been searching Fort DeSoto Park and all that. So that's us up to date. We were able to actually fill in a lot of the dates between September 1st and September 11th and what was going on, which included him stopping at his sister's home on the 1st, which involved them going camping, which involved him, possibly mowing the lawn and going on a bike ride with his mom, and then buying a phone on the 4th. So we've been able to fill in some of these gaps here. But what we don't know is where Brian Laundrie is. Now we're going on day 18, and I'm really not trying to laugh here because it's actually a really serious situation. But I just hate coming to you every single time in these videos and just being like, nope, still no Brian. And at this point, it just feels like, is this going to be one of those things where we just forget about the case at some point, and like 3 years down the line, Brian messes up and he gets arrested. We're like, oh my God, he was finally arrested. I really hope that's not the case. I think I have too much of high hopes that it's going to be soon. We're going to get some breaking news. I don't know. I really am hopeful, but we shall see. As far as any update about Dog the Bounty Hunter in the last 24 hours, I know yesterday he was much more quiet, and he had went to the Appalachian Trail because Brian had visited that before, and he had a lead that took him there, but they weren't really saying much. Today, I usually do these videos and I write out all my notes so I don't lose or my train of thought or forget what I'm going to say. And I just did the part 2 of the body cam footage, and that was all written out, so I wouldn't forget anything. But this one I actually did more so on the fly. Most of everything that I just said was off the top of my head, so I'm really hoping I didn't forget anything. I just didn't have time to write out my thoughts, and I didn't want to postpone it, so I was just like, okay, we're just going to go off the fly here. I'm pretty sure I was accurate and I didn't forget anything, but there's always a possibility that I did. And of course, if I find that I did, I will drive myself crazy if I don't come back to you and say, oops, I forgot to tell you something. But as of now, I just paused to review and parts of it, like play back parts of it, and it does seem like I covered most everything I wanted to say and the timeline off the top of my head. So, I'm seeing here that the update on Dog is that he did do some hunting today. There's no real confirmation on where, just that he went through some intense terrain and wet, swampy land. I don't think that means the Carlton Reserve, because I know that the FBI is still out there. It's a much smaller crew, and I know the park was closed, so I doubt that he was allowed to go in there and do any searches there. So that's the update. Unfortunately, how this works is, if you don't follow other cases, once the FBI takes over a case, that's about it. That's it. You don't really get a whole lot unless something big happens, then you'll hear from them. Or if they need the public's assistance in some way, then they'll come to the public and speak to the public. But local PD type departments or sheriff's office are much more forthcoming with information during investigations. I mean, even though they still say things like, we can't answer that, it's an active investigation, they are usually more open than the FBI is. And so, I want her to have justice, and so I'm not going to complain about it. Of course, I'm a human being, and I do want the information, but I know that there's reasons, and it's important for them to keep things close to the vest. So, unfortunately, it sucks for us, though, because we don't get to be in the know. It seems that most of the information we're getting at this point is through Dog, the bounty hunter, or the laundry's lawyer, and that's just about it. And we just have to accept that until something more significant happens that the FBI feels the need to speak to us or tell us about. And on a final note about Cassie, Brian's sister, I just saw somebody say something to the effect of, she lied because she said she hadn't seen him since the 1st. Technically, she didn't say that she didn't see him. She said that she didn't speak to him. I think people assumed that meant that she didn't see him too. But again, we don't know if she really did misunderstand this, which is totally plausible. And maybe she was talking about the fact that she hadn't spoken to him since this all happened, meaning the 11th, not the 1st. Which is easy to mess up, especially in an interview. That being said, if the case here is that it really was that she was saying she hadn't spoken to him since the 1st, and she clearly was in his presence on the 6th, according to the lawyer, and that means that she did speak to him, right? I mean, if you're in somebody's presence, you're not going to not speak to them. And if that is true, and she lied and is continuing to lie, then yeah, that's definitely sketchy, right? That's definitely sketchy. Why did you lie about that? However, I'm just not seeing it that way. I'm just not. I'd love to be proven wrong. If you have audio or video of her being directly asked if she has spoken to him since the 1st, I'd love to see that, other than just them saying they asked her that. I want them asking her that. And even at that, it doesn't really matter, because she could have just misunderstood the question. Yes, that's actually, possible. And I'm not trying to defend her here. I'm just saying that it's not everything is an automatic, this family, they're all liars. Like, not everything has to be that way. It just doesn't. It really doesn't. So I just think that people need to consider the other possibilities. And that's one of my biggest things I say on this channel, right? And you're probably tired of me saying that, but you wouldn't believe how many people need to hear that, okay? A lot need to hear that. So I will keep saying it and saying it and saying it until more and more people start listening to that and letting it sink in and possibly chilling out and letting something unfold before reacting to it. So on that note, I'm blabbering now because I'm tired, I'm done, and I will see you next time.